Hello, hello, it's Elizabeth dialing in today for Tuesday Tasty Yeses. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to host engaging virtual events by avoiding these 3 mistakes that cost you engagements. Are you up for it? Let me just do a quick tech check here and make sure that I am up and running. Let me know if you are catching this live or on the replay. I got lots of great questions here that I will be answering at the end of my teaching. All right. So let me just take a look here. Yes. So if you are tuning in today, say hi. Let me know that you're here. Let me know that you're present. I want to know, what are you most looking forward to spring? What are you most looking forward when it comes to spring? I have to tell you that I'm really excited for the snow to melt and go away so that I can actually go back outdoors and go biking, literally riding a bike. That's what I'm looking forward to. What are you most looking forward to? So happy March. It is a March already. We have 9 more months to go and 2021 is going to be done. Crazy, right? Crazy. Well, today I want you to stay with me to talk about hosting engaging virtual events and the 3 rookie mistakes that you can avoid when it comes to losing engagements. Now, this is for you if you're all about relationship service when it comes to your customers. You actually care that you have happy customers. You actually care that you actually have a relationship with your customers. This is not for you if you are what I call a one-night stand seller. You're just looking for the quick wins because you're focused on being really short-sighted, and it doesn't really matter who the customers are. It just matters that they have money in their wallet. And even though there's nothing wrong with that, when it comes to hosting your virtual events, when it comes to what I'm going to be teaching you in just a couple of minutes here, it's really critical that you think about the right customers that show up to your event, right? Because as you know, sales is about knowing you, liking you, and trusting you. And an engaging virtual event is the best way for them to engage with you, to really take maybe what they know about you, either seeing your posts or your videos or your lives, and start to interact with you at it like a two-way conversation to really start to build trust. So these virtual events are really for those that really want to have relationships and are thinking long-term about their business. Got it? All right, so let's just dive right in and start looking at what some of those rookie mistakes are, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. And send me some hearts. I see hearts there. Send me some fire. Are you as lit up as I am about March? Oh, I can't wait. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the first rookie mistake that I often see. Okay. Does this sound like you? And let me just see here. I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit here so that you can see this better. There. Is that better? Yeah, I think that's better. Okay. Rookie mistake number 1. Your audience's attention is actually an afterthought. Is this you? You've already posted the invite everywhere that you could possibly think of, right? Facebook groups, social media, you've tweeted it, you have done lives about it. I mean, you've made this effort to invite them, and they've noted in the Facebook invite that they're coming. So it's on them. And you sort of leave it at that. Does that sound like you? Does that sound like you? See, the thing is, I want you to keep in mind when it comes to really hosting engaging events is that what you really need to be focused on, oops, looks like I just moved this and it just messed up my whole thing. Well, that's okay. We're just going to roll with it, right? Is I want you to think about how you actually need to be earning your audience's attention every step of the way. Think of this as like audience ADHD, right? You are competing online on social media with thousands, hundreds of notifications and alerts from Facebook mobile app to Instagram alerts to TikTok alerts to the person's inbox, right? And so your audience in many ways has ADHD. And so you have got to remember that you got to earn their trust and their attention. Even if you've already done your part by inviting them, by posting and sharing it with them and making sure that they got it, right? But really engagement, you lose engagement when you start to kind of like lean out, like, oh, I've already done my part. I've already done my part. How many of you are guilty of that? Say yes, guilty in the comments if you're with me, right? So you have to remember that you must earn your audience's attention every step of the way. That means that you've got to lead with the human connection. It's not enough just to go ahead and post the invite and post the link and add it to them and just write your description and be done with it. You've got to remind to get them to show up. Okay, what does that mean? That means that you're reminding them in their DM. That might be making sure you're implementing ways for them to get text messages and opt in for that so that they get reminders. That means that you're going to also have to email them, right? To be able to get them to come to your event. Yes, you've got to go all out. Why? Because your audience, right, has audience ADHD, and you're competing with all these other free virtual events that are out there, right? And then on top of that, leading with the human connection means that you've got to personalize the reminders in a way that is based on their preference. Some of us prefer text messages. Some of us love chatbot reminders in DM. I'm one of those, right? Some of us prefer reminders as email. So you have got to provide different options for them to opt into getting reminders, right? Because every single time you have to earn your audience's attention. If you want them to engage with you, right? Like, you've got to engage with them. Does that make sense? You've got to remind them, right? And I'm going to talk about point number 2 in a little bit. It's not just, hey, by the way, I'm hosting this virtual event. It's about this topic on this date and time. That's not the type of reminding that I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about what that is in just a little bit here, okay? But it's up to you if you want sales in your business, right? If you want lead gen, leads coming in, you've got to earn your audience's attention. It is not, let me repeat, it is not an afterthought. It is not an afterthought, okay? It can't be. Yes, you may have done your part and posted the event and made the effort to invite them, and they're coming, and I know that you're super busy, right? But you already made this effort. Step 1, you've got to put in more effort to lead with the human connection, to follow up and remind them to show up and invest in technology to be able to opt in to get different reminders. This is about you running a business, right? And scaling and hitting, 6 to multiple 7 figures in your business. Your leads, your audience are precious, okay? So it's an investment. You're nurturing them. You've got to make the investment. All right, so what's number 2? This goes back to reminding. You maybe already posted the invite and wrote the amazing description and benefits all in the invite description, and you're set. You market your benefits once and then you forget it. And that is a huge mistake, because what did I just say to you in step 1? You've got to be what? You've got to earn your audience's attention. You are competing with all this other noise. You are asking them to take time away from their loved ones, from watching Netflix, from working to spend time with you, right? So what's in it for them? What is in it for them? And this is so key, because you got to constantly be marketing the benefits at every step of the way. You've got to lead with the human connection and remind them, encourage them why they need to show up to your event. I call this the why them frequency, right? Think about this for just a moment. Okay, this is what I teach my students inside of the Customer Yes Lab. about how important your messaging and your marketing is, and how important it is that if you are teaching or training a course or a workshop, that you're just not teaching, but you're also marketing and teaching, right, folks? Because when you jump into, let's say, a rental car, right, and you turn on the radio, within just seconds, you know if that station's for you, right? You know, based on the tune that's playing, whether or not you're going to change the channel or whether or not you're going to continue to listen to that station because it's your jam, right? Your messaging is like the radio frequency. It's the what's in it for me. Your customers are listening to your messages, your marketing, and saying, what's in it for me? So when you are always constantly consistent with marketing the benefits for your online virtual events and you're engaging them, right? Because you're not just talking about come to this event, it's on this topic, here's the date and time. You're saying, here's why you need to come. Reason one, bam. And you're asking for engagement back. Does this sound like you? Bam. Reason two, does this sound like you? Bam. Reason three, when you come, this is what you're going to get. Are you ready for that? Bam. Right? You've got to constantly be speaking to your customers' YFM frequency. What's in it for me? Again, audience ADHD, you have to earn their time, right? I mean, you're a stranger. You're competing with their loved ones. You're competing with Netflix. You're competing with other things that they would rather be doing, sitting on the couch doing. So how do you get them to come to your virtual event? You got to constantly be marketing the benefits. All right. If you are loving this, send me some fire, send me some hearts. Say hi. So what's the other thing? Last tip. Rookie mistake number 3, when it comes to losing engagements, you don't really put much effort or care into the online experience and conversation. Look, your virtual event, I know it's important to you, right? But it's really an online experience and conversation, okay? And many make this mistake of assuming that if you plan the event in person, that somehow the same agenda that you would have in person is now you can just basically deliver it online and hop on the call and present, right? And maybe just ask 1 or 2 questions. But here's the hot tip right here. Your agenda that you would generally plan in person, only about 60% of that should really be done online, right? And again, you're leading with the human connection in that you have to recognize that your engagements during the online event is a conversation. It's a two-way conversation. Even if you're presenting, right? Even if you're just presenting at like a webinar training, it's still a two-way conversation. The other 40%, you've got to fill in with other tool features like polls or asking micro yes questions for response and checking in and make sure they're understanding what you're teaching. Or you're doing breakout sessions like in Zoom, right? Those are some ways that you can make sure people are really engaged. Why? Because online, you're competing with different screens. You're competing with all the different alerts. You're competing with all the different tabs that they might have open going on at the same time on their screen, their device. So their attention span is not only short, but they're multitasking. And so you've got to make sure that you're building in sprinkles of engagement using technology or what I call micro yes questions, right? So an example of a micro yes question would be like, does this sound like you? If so, type yes in the comments, right? Like engaging questions so that your audience has to listen to you, right? And then making sure that you're doing things like breakout sessions so that they get an opportunity to meet some of the other participants, for instance. Why is that important? Because you're competing for their attention, right? So if they're tuning in and they can't hang in there for a breakout session, right? They're going to either decide not to come to your event, or they're going to feel, kind of silly sitting there and being like, oh, I can only listen in. And the people that show up that are actively engaging and are part of the breakout sessions and fully playing all in, those are the action takers that you want in your business. Those are the ones that are showing up and showing commitment. Those are the type of prospects and leads that you want. You don't want the people that just listen in. You don't, because why? They're not that committed, right? So that's really the key here, folks, is that as you're thinking about how do I not lose engagement, you've got to take care of, let me just zoom out here, right? You've got to take care and remember that you must constantly earn your audience's attention. And a really great way to make sure that your people are showing up is that you're reminding them of an incentive. Maybe it's a gift to show up. So you're giving an incentive or a bonus or a gift when they show up. And you're definitely giving another gift if they stay until the event is done. And you must be present to win or things like that. People just love gifts and they love incentives. So those are some fun ways that you can get people to come. Okay. I mean, you're doing all of this marketing already and it's costing you tons and tons of time already. So why not just go that extra mile and invest in some really fun gifts and bonuses and incentives to get people to come? Okay. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. Okay. If you're only posting and sharing the events and you stop short of really leading with the human connection, right? Like leading with the human connection to get butts into seats, leading with the human connection to make sure that at your virtual event that people are actually showing up, and then you're like leading with human connection to make sure that they're engaged. If you stop short of all of that, this means that you will get 0 leads and 0 sales. Why? Because sales is all about trust. And from the day one touch point, if you have demonstrated that you're not leading with the human connection, you have demonstrated that they're just a person behind a screen because you already did your part. You've already posted the event and sent them the invite, and you already wrote this amazing description copy, right? And you're not going that extra mile to extend that human connection by sending them a private DM or a voice audio to say, hey, I'm really excited that you're going to be there. They have no attachment to you. There's no relationship there. And so if there's no relationship there, and every step of the way, right, from when you've started marketing and promoting your event to when you are trying to get them to actually show up, all the way to now that they've showed up, how do you get them to engage with you during your event, all the way to now, how do I get them to stay until the end of the event where I can maybe do my pitch? If you have stopped short at any of those touch points, and you have failed to lead with the human connection, that means you get 0 leads and 0 sales, because sales is all about trust. And you're letting that laziness, if you will, actually get in the way of happy sales. Now, what if there was a better way to really get that engagement, right? Inside of the Customer Yes Lab, where I teach my students, is that you've got to lead with compassion. You've got to lead with the human connection, especially online, because people get too lazy hiding behind their screens, right? To really make that extra effort. See, here's the thing. If this was a real in-person event and they came to your event, right? Like you would have reached out to them and they would have came. At the door, you would have probably greeted them, right? And you would have made introductions to maybe a couple of people that you knew at that event. If this was an event that you were hosting, you would have had food and you would have given them all these different ways to engage and really, interact and fill that void until your presentation or training started. Wouldn't you? I mean, you are going that extra effort in person. But why all of a sudden it's online and it's a virtual event that we have gotten lazy? And we no longer take that extra mile or take that extra step to greet someone at the door when they first arrive. I mean, think about that. That's huge. And that's the biggest difference. So for this week, if you would love to get some help around your next virtual event, I have 3 limited spots open. Type strategy in the comments and my team will reach out to you with my booking link to book a call for that. And it's completely complimentary to you for this week as being part of this community here inside my group. And then if you want my notes, right, type handout into the comments and my team will get you the handout of what that is. Got it? All right, so let me go ahead and answer some questions. I got a lot of great questions in the group here. So let me just go ahead and grab them and ask questions about what that is. And I had it up. I had it up. So you'll have to excuse me. I had it up. And then let's just take a look at what that is, okay? So folks here, I'm going to do a Q&A now, and I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions about what it takes to host a virtual online event. Right? And if you're part of this community, you know that every Tuesday when I do my trainings, I also do extra bonuses and tips and prompts inside of this group here because I want you to stay focused on practicing teachings that I'm having every week. Like I don't just post things because I want you to read them, right? Like these prompts have put a lot of sweat and tears into, even if it's free content, to say, are you doing this? Are you doing it? Because when do results happen, friends? Results happen in the doing, right? So if you're not doing, results ain't happening. I'm just letting you know, right? So here's a great question. How to get people to show up? Kajwa Shong asked. And you get people to show up, as I mentioned, by reminding them, leading with the human connection, incentives for them to show up, and incentives for them to stay until it's done, okay? Another question is asked by May Moa is she wants to know the platform to use for engagement between technology and customer, specifically data flow and point of contact tracking. Okay, that's a lot there, but I'll try my best to answer that one. So you're probably very familiar with Zoom, and I would say Zoom actually is a really great platform for hosting smaller virtual events. Like a workshop or a training or like a virtual networking session. If you are looking to host like virtual summits or online summits, one of my favorite tools is Hopin, Hopin, because it's almost like a conference-like online experience and it's pretty affordable. So and pretty reasonable. So that's the one that I use. Now, data flow and point of contact tracking, that's got to be probably pretty manual. I don't know of a online platform that can do all of that. But like, for example, you want to make sure that whatever tool you use, that you're capturing registration information, right? So for example, if you're hosting it on Zoom, even though you might just have the meeting module and not the webinar, you just want to make sure that as part of your event somehow you're capturing people's emails or their Facebook profiles, basically as a way to quote subscribe or opt in so you can follow up with them. And there's a couple of different ways you could do that, right? Like if you had the Zoom webinar, people would have to register and give you their email. If you are doing just a Facebook event and you're going to do like a Facebook Live, I would consider doing some sort of incentive or gift where you can put like a landing page together and then get them to opt in and give you their email or just something so that you have their contact information. And then from there, you can then follow up as, again, part of that ongoing conversation. So May, I hope that helped answer your question. And then Goshul asks, how do you keep it interesting and get the audience engaged? And how do you be a good speaker in order to keep their attention? I love this question. And this is one that I covered earlier, but you want to make sure that you're asking micro yes questions. What do I mean by that? You want to start training your audience to say yes to you, whether it's a really small engagement question like, do you prefer chocolate or vanilla ice cream? Do you prefer a Mac or PC? Those are examples of like micro yes questions where you're getting them to engage with you. And so you want to sprinkle a couple of these throughout your online event presentation. So the ones I just gave you are really, really simple, almost like icebreakers, but you want to ask a lot of questions back to the audience. Like, for example, if I'm describing someone who's my ideal customer or the customer that I don't want to work with, right? I might say something like, do you like working with one night stand entrepreneurs who basically take money from you and then you never hear from them again? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments, right? And likely, if it's your audience, they're going to say no, 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 right? Or you might say, do you love working with other entrepreneurs or customers that value what they do, what you do, and really are going to pay higher premium prices? Do you love that too? Right? And then in the comments, you're asking them to engage with you and say yes to you, right? So that's a really great way of really making sure that you're asking these really simple questions that generate very simple answers. Okay. The questions that you don't want to ask are things like, have you ever been depressed before? Like, just these really negative questions that you just know that people are just not going to publicly admit, or asking open-ended questions where you might want to give them like really lengthy answers, right? Like, those are questions that you should probably avoid because no one really has time to type all of that into the comments, right? Now, how do you be a good speaker? Well, as I mentioned earlier, you have to care about the online experience and lead with the human connection and having conversations. Questions, micro yes questions are a really great way of doing that. Polls and breakout sessions. So what that means to you is you actually don't have to speak as much as you probably would in person. What that means is you have to keep your presentation or speech pretty short and account for the rest of the time being more interactive activities like breakout sessions and things like that. So the good thing about it being online is that you actually, as the host, right, you actually get to speak less, right? Which is, if you're, public speaking or speaking is not your strength, that's a great thing. But the downside to that is that you've got to now put these activities like breakout sessions or polls into your whole event that's still constructed, orchestrated, all coming together will still lead to the results that you want. And that result can be lead generation for you. It can be a sale for you. So all these different activities or ways that you can engage with your audience still has to create an experience. I call it the breadcrumbs that lead to the outcome that you want. So the sale that you want. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So Gold, I hope that answers your question right there. So let me just bring this back up. If you want the handout here, type handouts in the comments and my team will get this out to you. And if you would love to have someone be a sounding board for you on really how do you monetize an engaging virtual event and have that lead to happy sales, go ahead and type strategy in the comments and my team will reach out to you to book a complimentary call with me where I really sit down and say, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And how can we turn these virtual events from dry and boring to engaging that really has a clear conversion path to getting those happy yeses in your business? All right. So join me next week. Next week, I'm going to be talking about, this is what I'm really, really excited about talking about. Next week, it's all going to be about, how the silence in your audience, how you can tell the silence in your audience whether or not they're still whipped on you, right? So oftentimes we often look, just like today, we're looking at engagement. We're looking at whether or not, right? Whether or not our customers are going to engage with us to indicate or show us that they are interested in what we're doing, right? But next week, I'm going to do the opposite of this. I'm going to be talking about the silent way your audience shows they're whipped on you, how sometimes it's not necessarily the engagements that lead to the happy sales, but it's the silence. Do you know what the silence is? The lurkers. how the lurkers really are the make and break in your happy sales. And I can tell you from my own personal experience that my sales and how I've grown my business has been mainly from the lurkers. The lurkers are the ones that will send me the private DMs. Okay. So next week, join me for that training on the 7 way your audience actually can show you that you're whipped, and how it's not the engagements, but really looking at the lurkers so that you can really speak to the lurkers and provide them with a way to still engage with you in a much more private, on the low down kind of way. You following me on that? So same place, same time next week. Let me know in the comments if you've got questions about lurkers and engagement. I will be taking those on next week's Tasty Yes episode. Until then, keep doing.